Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name's Farah Halaby and I'm a professional Muslim life coach, and tonight I'd like to talk to you about thoughts, about the things knocking around in our heads, what consumes our minds, what stories we have, what narrative, what perspective, what we've got on our minds, what we've got percolating, and why that's important, why that's even a thing. Because if we're skipping along through life, we wake up, we do whatever it is that we do, we talk to whoever we talk to, we go wherever we go, that's not accidental. That doesn't just happen by by chance. It's not, potluck. It's not a gamble. It's not dependent on the weather. It doesn't depend on lots of different variables. It 100% depends on you, on what you think, what you decide, where you choose to go, what you choose to wear, what you have come to the conclusion that is the best thing for you to do, or the thing to do, whether it's best or not for you. But it comes from you. And the bit that it comes from is the decisions. And decisions are choices, are reasons, are thoughts. And you will do, you will say, you will go, you will be whatever it is that you believe of your thinking about that. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I had a client session this morning, and in it was very eye-opening for lots of different reasons, but something the penny dropped for my client this morning in the session, which in speaking about her situation, her current situation with her husband, and she had felt, or she felt this morning, that communication was an issue in their marriage, that he couldn't communicate. He wasn't a good communicator. There was a lack of communication. There was a lack of him wanting to communicate with her. So not only was the communication lacking, the desire to communicate wasn't there. And based on that thought, he can't communicate. He doesn't want to communicate. He isn't able to. With those thoughts knocking around, everything then that her husband was doing became evidence-based to substantiate what she was thinking. So if he was sat there just minding his own business, sitting there either on his computer or on his phone, that act, that behaviour, if you like, was evidence of his inability, his unwillingness to communicate with her. She was taking whatever he was doing as an intentional act of not communicating, or to substantiate his inability. And I'll give you an example of this in my own life. And this was a little while ago. I remember I'd made myself a cup of tea and took it into my office and was drinking it. And about 2 minutes later, my husband knocks on the door and he comes in and he saw the cup and he went, "Oh, made yourself a cup of tea, have you? Didn't make me one." "Oh, okay," and walked off. And I was just, doing my work, and I thought, yeah, I've made myself a cup of tea and I've come into the office. He was elsewhere in the house. He was doing something, I'm not too sure. But my action, my behaviour, my making my cup of tea wasn't a direct inaction against him. It wasn't anything to do with him. Me making tea for myself wasn't an act of me not making tea for him. And when we get into our heads about what the other person is doing, and we take everything that they do or what they don't do as a personal, intentional act, we will drive ourselves absolutely round the bend, making sense or trying to make sense in our weird and wonderful way of normal everyday occurrences. So I'll go back to my client this morning, and all the while that she had, he doesn't communicate. He can't communicate. He's not doing what I want him to do. He's not doing what I want him to be doing. In her mind, she had a very specific way of what she wanted, of how she wanted him to speak to her. Not just how she wanted him to speak to her, but what she wanted him to say in exactly the exact tone, with the exact wording, with the exact body language, with the exact facial expressions. She had created this perfect, if you like, or this acceptable or this desired way of communication in her head. And so everything that was falling short of that was, again, evidence that her husband just doesn't want to communicate with her, just can't do it, doesn't want to, incapable. And she was getting really, really upset, really, really frustrated with him. And it reminded me of, I don't know if you've seen the film The Breakup, I think it's called. It was Jennifer Aniston and oh my goodness, I can't remember his name. It'll come to me in a second. Vince Vaughn, I think. But anyway, and there's a scene in it where she's loading the dishwasher, or she's washing up. I can't remember. She's doing the dishes, and she asks him to do them, or she says something. Oh, you never do them, and he was like, why don't you just ask me? Why don't you, if you want me to do the dishes, why don't you just ask me instead of making all of these like slime comments? And she says something along the lines of, it's not that she wants him to do the dishes, she wants him to want to do the dishes. And it turned into a whole big argument. So in the conversation that I was having with my client this morning in the session, we unpicked and we got to the crux of what was really upsetting her. It was her belief about her husband. It was her beliefs about his communication. It was her thoughts about him that were frustrating her, because all the while she held those beliefs. He can't communicate. He doesn't want to communicate. He's unable to communicate with me. Everything that he was doing fell short of that. And he will never be able to communicate in exactly the spot on way that she had built up good communication or acceptable communication or the best communication in her mind. He would never be able to do that. And even if he got even close to it, she would still find fault in it, because it wasn't his communication that was the issue. It was the belief that, he wouldn't have been able to have proved to her that he can communicate, because that wasn't the thing that was upsetting her. She'd created this belief that he didn't want to, that he couldn't. And so while she had that going around in her head all the time, she was missing all of the ways in which he was perfectly capable of communicating, that there were, she was missing the present. She was missing what was going on with what he was actually doing for her, to her, even for her benefit, communicating with her in the way that he was, that was perfectly understandable, perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable for the situation that he was communicating in. But she was looking for that all singing, all dancing, all boxes ticked manner of communication. And whilst everything, it was like she had those glasses on, like that perfect communication glasses on. So everything that she could see wasn't that. Like, she had this mask or this template and she was looking at it, but nothing that he was doing was fitting that template. So I'll ask you, when you think about the struggles that you have, let's just say with your partner, and they have a particular behavior, or there's something going on in that relationship that is really annoying you, that's really getting on your nerves, that is just leading you to not be having a good old time, specifically with your spouse. If you didn't hold that belief about whatever it is that winds you up about them, would you see them differently? Now, that might sound like a silly question. It's a bit like asking, well, if you didn't think that what they were doing was cheesing you off, would you be cheesed off with them then? But that is the question, because it is 100% what you believe of the situation, what you think about the situation, that will give you your experience of that person, that situation, that circumstance. So I'll ask you again, if you didn't hold that belief about that person, would you still have the same feeling about it, or about them, about what they're doing? What would you think about them? What would you feel towards them if you didn't think that whatever it is that they're doing that upsets you and frustrates you, annoys you, gets right on your wick? How would you feel about them if you didn't think that about them? I'd love to know. And if you're wondering, well, you know, if I did, then so what? Well, for my clients and for myself, who have been and who are going through this process, the process that helped me and that is helping my clients achieve the results in their lives through a very simple understanding, but a very clear cut and very clear pathway to helping them overcome those mind dramas, overcome and create intentional beliefs that serve them. Because all the while they have a certain belief about their thinking, they're not having a great time. They're seeing the people in their lives that are closest to them through the lens of the problem, the behaviour. And once they let go of that and they see them through a different perspective, have different thinking, have different beliefs about them, the experience with that person completely changes. And they are leading lovely lives. SubhanAllah. I was going to share a story with you about my husband, or I'm going to actually, because I think I've shared enough. But if you were wondering, okay, well, how do I do this then? You know, what's the big deal about changing my perspective, changing my thinking, not having those same beliefs? Well, I'll ask you that question again, the one that I asked you a little while ago. If you didn't have the same thinking, the same perspective, the same opinion about your spouse, someone close to you, that really winds you up about them, how would you feel towards them if you thought differently about them? What difference would it make in the way that you see them, in the way that you behave towards them, in the way that you relate to them? Because I know that the difference isn't just a small difference, it's a massive shift. And when you think differently about someone or something, your experience, when you hold different beliefs about that thing, that person, that instance, that circumstance, the shift is quite phenomenal. And if you'd like to know how you can do that, how that can happen for you, or even inquire as to what's going on for you and how this relates to you, how this can help you overcome a problem in your marriage, in your relationship, then let me know. If you'd like to know how this has helped transform the lives of my clients, transformed my life, then I can offer you a confidential, safe, non-judgmental space to really see how this can be the same for you, inshallah. If you would like to get in touch and you would like the details of my next available appointment, my next available consultation, then if you send me an email at connect@farahalabi.com, or you can private message me on whichever social media outlet you're watching this on. But I'll ask you the question again, just for you to reflect upon it. If you thought differently about a person, if you held a different belief, an empowering belief, a quote-unquote positive thought about that person, how would that change your feeling towards them, and how would that change your opinion of them, your perspective of them, if you had different thinking about them? As you know, my name is Farah Halabi, and as always, I pray that you're safe, well, happy and healthy, and inshallah I shall see you again very soon. But for now, take care. Assalamu alaikum.